Hi, I'm Autumn,
And I'm Laura,
and together we're the
the
Boo
Boo
Sisters.
Sisters.
Hi, Boo Crew. How are you doing?
Welcome to episode 5.
It's stressful out there. So, listen, if the Boo Sisters is your getaway from the world and everything that's happening, we are so grateful that you're here in our space and we can give you some scary stories to look forward to.
Because if you're not scared already, you've come to the right place.
I don't honestly know if we scare anyone with our stories. They're more like just good informational,
I
historical.
don't know about that because we've talked about how some people just turn on our show and don't listen,
That's true.
have it on a low volume.
Okay, we've scared some people, but if you're here for the details, we've got you. You've come to the right
If you're
place.
here for the history and the mystery
Maybe that should be our slogan. If you're here for the history and the mystery, you've come to
and
the right place.
the hauntery.
Hauntery? Is that a word?
No, it's not a word. It is
Oh.
now.
Well, we can make it one. Yeah. So, Laura, I recently went on this trip to Charleston with a good friend of mine, and we just did a weekend, a very short weekend. It was a mom's vacation, away from the husbands, away from the kids, and
I like how you say it's a mom's vacation, and the first thing you say is it's away from the husbands,
yeah.
not
I
it's
mean,
away
if
from
you're
the
a
kids first.
mom, that might, your husband might be the biggest kid. So it was a great weekend. We ate at some fun restaurants. We went to see the angel tree, which is this big, historic, beautiful tree, which from the pictures you think is in a forest with some paths, but it's really basically adjacent to this parking lot. And you're like, what? But anyway, it's worth going to see.
I have
They have
never
some,
heard of the angel tree before. What does that have to do with
it's
angels?
an angel oak tree. I don't know what it has to do with angels. Maybe because it's lived so long, but it's beautiful. It's so big that its branches are weighted down and touch the ground, like come back on the
Oh,
ground and
maybe
go
it's
back
because
up.
the branches look like wings.
Maybe. Did you get that from what I'm doing with my arms? Like just now? Like, woo, they go up and then they go down. It's beautiful. We also, what else did we do? We went on some historic tours, which were great. But the highlight of the tour, if you know me at all, was our ghost tour that we did in
You
Charleston.
went on a ghost tour without me?
I know. I
Without your boo sister?
cheated on you. It's horrible. We went on this ghost tour. It was led by this guy named Nick. He has his company. It's called Stories in the Cemetery. And unlike your typical ghost tours, which I love, by the way, which are walking through the city and getting the history of different sites, which Nick also did. He also went to the different sites, walked us through the cities, and at each site, along with telling us the story and the history of what was at that historical site, he also provided us typical ghost hunting tools to, after we had heard the story, to then spend a few minutes in each location ghost hunting. So at certain,
Ooh.
yeah, it was so fun. And if anyone's in Charleston, I would encourage you to look up Stories in the Cemetery. He has two different tours. One is this ghost hunting tour, and one is a tour that is called Dead Writers of Charleston, and it's all about writers. Laura, you would love it. It's authors who have been in Charleston and like the ghost stories of those writers. This is a ghost tour where you can have an actual investigation while you're on the tour. So he comes with this backpack and he opens it up and he's like, "What tools is everyone interested in, you know?" And if you have a tool you're interested in, you can say, "Oh, I really wanted to try working with an ovulus," or "Oh, I really wanted to do an EMF," or "I really wanted to do XYZ." So you can choose. Laura, which tool would you say if you were on this tour? If he's
I'd
like, "What?"
probably do like the Estes method if I could, like a spirit box with a headset on, where you can't hear anything else and somebody's asking questions on the outside.
Yes, perfect, because that is what I said, Laura. And ironically, only two people got to do the Estes method, and it was at the end of the tour. But through
Ooh.
the tour, I got a spirit box, which so I had headphones on for most of the
Mm-hmm.
tour, and he would tell the history, and then for 10, 15 minutes, depending on the location, I would just listen to the spirit box in the headphones. And the spirit box I was using was essentially a radio that automatically flipped through stations really quickly. And so if you heard any words come out through those radio stations, the theory is that the radio station was paused on that, or the words were brought out long enough for a reason for you to hear them. So there were certain phrases, right, or certain numbers that you would hear, or certain
Mm-hmm.
words that supposedly were prominent, brought forward
So
by
what did
spirits.
you hear?
I heard a lot of things using the spirit box that were really fun, but also getting used to hearing the white noise and the flipping through stations was it's like a sensory overload because it's like listening to multiple voices at one time and you're trying to pick out any word that you can
Mm-hmm.
comprehend. So it was really fun. And some of the words that I ended up hearing were applicable to the investigation spot that we were on. So it was really fun. My friend who I went with, she was using the Ovulus through the investigations through the different sites. And it was exciting to see how many words were popping up. Because I feel like sometimes you see on the TV shows them using an Ovulus and they're not getting anything on the Ovulus, or it's taking a long time for them words to pop up. But at these haunted locations that we went to in Charleston, we were investigating for 2.5 hours. And at the end of the night, we had 200 words pop up. And some of
Wow.
the times, words didn't make any sense, but a lot of times, the words were applicable to the location we're in. So it was just really interesting to see that tool being used in that fashion. The investigator, Nick, was really good in directing us to be respectful of the spirits. So at certain locations, he would say, "Here's the story in this location. Here's some questions you could ask. Please don't ask any questions about this spirit's children because they
Mm-hmm.
burned in a fire or something. Like, we're just not going to go into that subject because that's hurtful if you were asking a live person that question." Right?
Mm-hmm.
He was very good that way. He was also very good to say, "We want to formalize that there's actually a spirit here and it's not just, a normal high EMF that for whatever reason is drawing out a word on the ovulus." So
Mm-hmm.
you want to, your first questions should be, if, someone's here with me, can you please help us know that you're here with me by describing me or describing what I'm wearing or describing the place that we're in, so I
Mm-hmm.
know that you're in this same place as me before asking questions that would relate to them or questions that
Mm-hmm.
would relate to their story." So that was really helpful in grounding, oh, there's something actually here versus these are just random words
Yeah.
showing up.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And he's recording the session the whole time on the spirit box. So you can
Mm-hmm.
also like re-listen to it. The other people who weren't listening to the spirit box could listen to the spirit box, or people who weren't listening to the EMF on their headphones could listen to the EMF to see if they brought anything else after the
Mm.
investigation. So it was really interesting. And then at the end of the tour, he brought us to the Charleston Library, and the two people who were going to do the Estes method, which were me and this other girl who had also been listening to a spirit box the whole night, we got to be the people under the Estes method, because we had gotten used to the
Mm-hmm.
sensory of listening, he left us and took the rest of the tour. There was about 7 people on the tour, but he took the rest of the people to a different area on the tour to tell them the story of what had happened in the last location and to tell them the ghost that we were trying to make contact with. And me and the girl who went into the Estes method knew nothing. We didn't know the story. We didn't know the ghost. Our job was to wear the headphones that canceled out all other noise and to simply listen to the words that we
Mm-hmm.
heard
And
come
be the
through,
voice. Yeah.
to be the voice. And so it was really interesting to me. My friend was one of the observers or the people who knew the story and was, listening to him ask questions and then listening to me and this other girl respond. And afterward, she was almost in tears because it was so emotional of how direct responses they were getting. Because it was being recorded, I could listen to it afterwards, which I did. The spirit seemed very directed, like, yes, I'm here. I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
to you, but I don't want to be. I don't want to be here.
Oh.
I don't want to be talking to you. And some of the questions were answered directly, and some of the questions were just like, I'm still here, but I don't want to talk to you, kind of thing.
Do you think it could have been more than one though, if there were spirits there
Yes,
talking to you?
because one time he asked, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm sitting right next to you." And the other girl said, "I'm over there." At the same time,
Hmm.
we said that. And then another time he asked, "We want you to tell you your story. Do you want to tell your story tonight?" And I said, "Yes, I really want to." And the other girl said, "I don't want to at all," at the
Hmm.
same time. Isn't
Weird.
that weird?
Yeah. Do you think it was one who is you the whole time and one that was this other girl the whole time, like with you answering or, relaying the
Um,
information through the spirit box?
I'm not sure. I can't tell. I really saw my my role as like, I'm just gonna spout out whatever I hear in the spirit box. I'm not gonna try to be like, no, that's dumb. I'm not saying that because I have no idea what's being
Mm-hmm.
asked or what the story is. I'm just gonna say whatever it is. And so I didn't really pay attention. However, my friend who went with me, she has always been emotionally sensitive to spirit activity. And she said during that Estes method, she got an overwhelming sense of depression or sadness that she just really didn't want to stay in that space, just
Mm.
very uneasy and very depressed. And so it makes me feel like there was probably multiple spirits there, but what she was feeling was maybe the one dominant spirit that we were trying to contact.
So the library itself was where you were at and it was haunted, the library?
There's a spirit tied to the library, and supposedly he haunts the library and a local park that's around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And so Nick, the ghost hunter, he said he went to the park before the tour and said, "Hey, we're going to be at the library tonight. We would love you to come talk to us. Here's the people I'm bringing on the tour,"
Mm-hmm.
and listed our names. I want to introduce you to them. But the story goes, and I'm not going to remember the story, but the story was about a writer, and he has a really tragic history and a tragic life.
Don't we all?
Yeah, and and the library is supposedly one of the places he haunts because he's writing in his final moments and he coughs up blood onto
Mm.
this piece of paper, and he has tuberculosis and he dies like right there. And you can see where his pen like trails off, and the blood splatter is in the shape of a man leaning over a pen and a desk, and he's writing. Like the blood splatter is in that
What?
shape. The piece of paper is in the library, but only members of the library get to see it on Halloween night every year. They open up the historical document for only members to see. The spirit's name was Henry Timrod. You can look it up online, the blood splatter, and it does look like a man leaning over and writing at a desk. But I think our mind does that thing where if you're told it's a picture of something, you're like, oh, yeah, that's a
Mm-hmm.
picture of something, where it could also just be a blood splatter.
Right.
But one of the things I said in the Estes method, he asked a question that said, "Henry, why are we at the library tonight?" what are we here for? And I said, under the Estes method, members only.
Weird.
And I knew nothing of the story, and I'm just repeating what I'm hearing.
But it's weird you would say that though, if it was members only to see the blood splatter or whatever on Halloween. I mean, it's not Halloween. You guys aren't actually looking at it, right?
Right.
So,
But does Henry know that? I don't know. Maybe not.
well,
But
that sounds
maybe,
like it was
if you can only
us.
say a couple of words, maybe he's like, well, we're at the library because of my blood splatter. Maybe blood splatter is harder to say than member.
Maybe. It sounds super fun either way. I'm jealous. Okay, so Autumn, you're going first today. And today we have some really special, exciting stories because we're talking about different haunted locations that our listeners have recommended.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you, Boo Crew, for recommending so many places. And if you have a recommendation of a scary, spooky place, please go on our website and fill out our little contact us form, and you might hear your story on a future episode.
If you submitted a suggestion to us for this episode and you were not chosen, just know that we've kept those other suggestions in the future possibilities hat. So it might still pop up.
So today, I will be telling a story about Washington, D.C.'s Eisenhower Executive Office Building. And this suggestion comes to us from Lora D. in Falls Church, Virginia. Thank you, Laura, for the great
Whoop, whoop.
suggestion.
Fellow Laura, I can get on board.
I'm going to start by telling you a spooky story. Lonnie Hoovey walked down a granite staircase to a display case on the ground floor in the north wing of the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. As director of the building, it was his responsibility to showcase items of importance in the case and switch them out from time to time as new visitors would journey through the halls, and other staff members would stop by to see the historical photos and items he had placed within. Many people were unaware, but the case was actually built for the Smithsonian Castle building across the mall and a few blocks east. An old guidebook indicates that nearby the case and within held 3 Peruvian mummies, a man, a woman, and a child, along with some skulls of ancient Peruvians and other grave goods from Bolivia and Peru. Now, however, the case held historical documents, signs indicating important facts or stories, and old black and white photographs. Lonnie was the only one with a key. As he meticulously set up the glass case with new items, he placed the signs perpendicular to the shelves and gently leaned the old photographs against the back wall. He had always been very orderly and needed everything to be just right. He looked at his watch. Jeepers! His next tour was set to meet him at the front of the building in just a few minutes. It was after working hours, and he often stayed late as the assigned staff to provide public tours. He gave the case one final glance, closed the glass door, and locked it. The old exhibit case was one of the first stops on the tour, and he was anxious to show his group the news stories and documents on display. The tour group loved the setup and spent a few minutes oogling the old documents. About an hour later, when the group had finished the tour and they were headed out, they stopped by the case again. As they approached the case, Lonnie noticed that something was wrong. All the signs and documents were askew. They had been turned in all different directions, some so far that they were nearly unreadable now. The startled tour guests all thought it was odd, and Lonnie closed out the tour more quickly than usual that night. So for Lonnie, this was not the first time the items in the case had been moved. On other occasions, he had witnessed items change their placement over the course of weeks, sometimes months, but this was the first time it happened within minutes. It took Lonnie a while to admit that something unseen had tampered with the case, but for him, this confirmed his suspicions. There were supernatural forces haunting the Eisenhower Executive Building. a conclusion he finally shared in internal documents with the government and proclaimed publicly in 2004. In an interview, Lonnie dismissed the idea of colleagues playing a prank or that the building vibrations were unintentionally shifting the items, saying he had enlisted an intern to help him try to replicate the unexplained movements. But they found that jiggling the exhibit case would lead to all the items moving at once, and typically in the same fashion, and not just one or two at a time and in different directions. Additionally, a different display case in the opposite end of the building never gave him any trouble at all. Lonnie shared his mystery with colleagues in the facilities department, who responded with stories of their own, such as seeing people wandering the halls who seemed to vanish, a claim that resonated with Lonnie, having once had a similar experience that he himself had brushed aside.
You know, my first instinct on this whole thing.
Yeah.
So the first thing I thought of was, oh, this is going to be a night at the museum situation. The things are going to come alive and come out of the cases.
Oh gosh, that's
And then I
gross.
thought, this is perfect Scooby-Doo mystery stuff right here. Old man Jenkins is going to be behind it all.
Right. Like there is someone playing a joke on him.
Like
But
they're
he
trying
seems
to get them to
pretty
abandon this building so that they can drill for oil. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
probably. So now for a little background. Okay, so Alfred Mullett, a renowned architect in the late 1800s, was asked by the US government to design and oversee the creation of the Eisenhower Executive Building, which was originally called the State War and Navy Building. In the course of 8 years, he oversaw and designed the construction of over 40 buildings across the country. 8 years, 40 buildings. That's crazy. Do that math. That's like 6 buildings a year.
That's not the right math.
All
You
right.
did that
Okay.
on purpose.
Yeah, I did. I was just checking to see if everyone's listening.
Oh
Okay.
my goodness.
So in 8 years, he oversaw the design and construction of 40 buildings across the country, including many which still stand today. So the State War and Navy building was completed in 1888, and Mullet ended up suing the US government for payment of his fee for designing the building because he never received payment. However, the government argued that the project took too long, 17 years, by the way, to build this, and went over budget to construct. That sounds like something the government would do,
Yeah, it
right?
does.
Not to mention that during this time, Mullet was widely criticized for the building's unique but out of place design for the nation's capital. The structure was designed in French Second Empire style, characterized by its sloped roofs, high windows, and iron framework. Nearly
Hmm.
2 miles of tile corridors snake around its halls. Ornate circular staircases are positioned in its corners. The cartoonist Charles Adams would later copy the style to draw his Adams Family mansion in his cartoons.
Oh, that's cool.
Mark Twain called the building the ugliest building in America. Sad face.
What was Mark Twain doing there? And he was just like, I'm going to criticize this building because why?
I mean, some people can be rude.
But it's Mark Twain. What business does he have doing that?
Good question. A lower court ruled in favor of Mullet. However, a federal court ruled that while Mullet was indeed the designer and was entitled to a fee, the statute of limitations had expired. Therefore, Mullet lost the case and was never paid for his largest design he ever built. Mullet
Sad. I
fell.
feel bad for the guy.
I know. Oh, you're right. We do owe you money, but since it's been so long, so Mullet fell into financial hardship and ill health and committed suicide in 1890, 2 years after the building's completion.
Dang. If that's your passion and this is the biggest project you've ever done, and it took you so long and you finally completed it, the feelings that go into a project like that, I can't even imagine then them saying to you, oh, well, all that time and all that effort and all of that passion you put into it, it's ugly. We don't like it. It took you too long. Too bad.
Right. To have people say, oh, we're not going to pay you for this. And then 90% of passerbys being like, this is the most hideous building I've ever seen. How would that make you feel
Hmm.
after something you put most of your energy into that you loved and you wanted to create? It's so sad. Since then, workers say the building is hosted by a dark energy, and it is often referred to as DC's most haunted building. 8 people have died in the building because of heart attacks. 7 have died during its construction. 3 died after falling from its very steep monumental stairs. 2 government workers committed suicide, and a cleaning lady was crushed by an elevator.
That by far is
So,
the worst one. That last one, being crushed by
yeah.
an elevator, is one of my nightmares.
What? Are you serious? Like you have nightmares about being crushed by an elevator?
Who doesn't?
That's so random. Okay, so Michelle Perry, who worked under Lonnie as an intern in the summer of 2006, shared her own unusual experience with the Washington Post. While walking down a granite staircase in the Executive Office Building, the same stairwell where President William Howard Taft had once fallen down the steps, she said, I swear I felt like I had someone holding onto my arm, helping me down the staircase. Gary Walters, who started as a security officer at the White House in 1970, recalled how cleaning workers would report seeing spectral figures in the hallways and rooms late at night. They were so certain that the apparitions had been real people that security personnel were dispatched to check them out. One staffer, because she was not authorized to discuss ghost stories with the media, described how the doorbell to her suite sometimes rings when she's working late at night, but when the staffer opens the door, she finds no one in the hallway. Last year, in 2024, the White House declined to comment on claims the executive office building was haunted. But some officials continue to whisper about their own mysterious experiences, still claiming that it is the most haunted building in Washington, D.C.
Well, I might have something to say about that because my haunting also is in DC, but we'll get to that.
That's my story. It was really hard to find stories about what's happened there, even though there was a lot of internet stories that mentioned how haunted it was. It was very not detailed information about stories that had happened there.
Government cover up.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to cover up aliens, then they would want to cover up ghosts too.
Every so often, we have a story, one of our hauntings, where they have to not talk about that ghost problem or
Right. People
thereabouts.
do not like talking about the ghost problem.
That should be one of our, if we ever make a t-shirt, we should be like, don't talk about that ghost problem or
Oh,
something like that.
right. Don't mention the ghost problem. That's
Hmm.
great. Who wants a t-shirt that says that? Or a coffee mug? That would be great. Or in our sticker pack. It could
Whoa,
be
we
like,
just like bloomed a whole bunch of merch that I didn't even have any idea
we
about.
we have to get some merch on the table.
Drop a comment somewhere if you think merch would be cool and what you would like to see as merch.
That would be helpful. So, Laura, what is your boo scale rating?
My boo scale rating is a 1.
Okay, that's fair. I agree. It's like a 1.
I think because mine kind of freaked me out. So now you're going to have a harder
Listen,
time freaking me out if I have
I
one that
think,
freaks me out.
yeah, I think it is a 1 because there's really only that one concrete story and then a lot of whisperings. Oh, I've seen some things, or oh, this weird thing happened, or oh, my doorbell rings. But it's not concrete, scary stories.
I agree. Also, once again, we're dealing with a ghost. Potentially, if your main ghost or main ghost story is the architect, it's a sad ghost to me. And I know that it said that the spirit might be angry, and that's true. But I think people come across as angry when they're sad sometimes, and that he seemed more of like a sad story than an angry story, and maybe just misunderstood. So, or bad for him. And I think if you approached anybody with sympathy, including potentially a ghost, like you were just talking about the ghost hunt that you went on, if you approach the ghost with respect and with sympathy, I think that you get a different kind of experience than if you approach them with hostility or expecting them to be angry.
Yeah. If anything, like mischievous and playful.
Yeah, the rattling of the cases and that sort of thing, it would be hard to prove. You could get like a seismograph, maybe, like
And
something that
see.
measures the shaking and put it in several different places, like put it in the case where it happens and put it on the floor a little ways away and
Yeah, to see
see
if it's different.
where it's recorded. Yeah, if something goes off.
Well, nonetheless, thank you, Laura, for the suggestion. It's always fun to do a story from, quote, my hometown. So,
Hometown hauntings.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm
your turn.
curious if the Laura, if she had an experience there or had heard a story herself, what inspired her to suggest it.
Yeah, good question. Laura, if you're listening, feel free to message us.
It's my turn.
Yeah, I am ready to be freaked out.
Okay. Are you sure?
No, because I have to go to bed after this.
You always say that.
Because we
Maybe you
always
should
do
just
this like
expect not going to
late at
bed.
night. I don't know
That's
why
when
we
you
do it.
have to talk about hauntings. That's the
We should
perfect
do it
time.
in the morning.
I don't think so.
Everyone else gets to listen in the morning if they download our story right away.
Okay, listeners, how many of you actually listen in the morning? I'm thinking more people listen
we
closer to the night.
we should honestly do a Facebook poll and see when people listen
We
to
can
this.
do that. We can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Look for a Facebook poll. We want to know when you listen.
Settle in, everybody. And anybody who has a phobia of surgery or medical anything, you might want to not listen to this one.
Okay. I'm just
Just
gonna put you
FYI.
on mute.
You're going to put me on mute.
Yeah.
So apparently I'm alone on this one, everybody, because Autumn's not listening.
Oh gosh.
My haunt was suggested by Monica W. from Washington, D.C., and it is on St. Elizabeth's Hospital, also located in Washington.
Ooh, Monica.
So thank you, Monica. All right, let's get into it. Once the largest and only federally run mental hospital in the United States, St. Elizabeth's now sits abandoned on a sprawling corner of southeast Washington, D.C. It was originally opened in 1855. The picturesque red brick manors were home to beautiful gardens, a billiards table, and so much more to try to give the patients their freedom and life within the walls. It was designed with good intentions as a place for moral treatment, respect, a well balanced diet, clean living conditions, all the things you could ask for. At one point during the late 19th century, the hospital even housed animals from the National Zoo during the zoo's construction, allowing the patients to view and interact with the animals.
What?
Right?
So
I
they
knew you
took
loved that, Adam.
the animals that were going to be in the zoo and were like, you guys can play with these animals for a while?
Basically. So the zoo was being constructed and they actually didn't have anywhere for the animals to go. And one of the closest locations that had the most land and the most availability for these animals to roam and have somewhere to be while the zoo was being constructed was the grounds of St. Elizabeth's because it was a huge, huge area.
Do you know what animals specifically were first there?
I had that same question. I couldn't find pictures or very much more information than that. So
I'm hoping the rest of your story is about animal ghosts.
I wish
Like the lion ghost in the basement of that bar I did. That could be a
that would
lion ghost.
be amazing. We should have a whole episode dedicated
Of
to animal ghosts.
ghost animals? Okay.
Yeah. Next season, you should put it on the list.
Okay.
This sounds like a really great mental care facility on the forefront. It sounds like it should have been. But let's not also forget it had the honor of being the first federally operated psychiatric facility. In fact, its original name was the Government Hospital for the Insane, which meant that federal criminals who pled not guilty by reason of insanity would be sent here for reform and management.
Yikes.
So this included Charles J. Guiteau, who assassinated James Garfield, the 20th president, as well as Richard Lawrence, who attempted to kill President Andrew Jackson, and John Hinckley Jr., who shot Ronald Reagan in 1981.
I wonder how they like got away with insanity charges.
Yeah, they claimed insanity at their trials, and I'm not certain. Maybe they just had really good lawyers or something.
That's crazy. Okay.
So at its peak, St. Elizabeth's housed 8,000 patients and boasted 4,000 employees as it struggled with overpopulation, like many other facilities around the same time. And in the 1930s to 1950s, St. Elizabeth saw some of its darkest days, but not merely due to the crowding problem. On the outer edge of campus sits a nondescript 3-story building overgrown with weeds. The metal lettering once adorning the entrance has now fallen away. The long, empty halls covered in fallen paint chips and its laboratory rooms empty. But if you take the stairs down into the basement, you'll find something more creepy and sinister than you can imagine. A single large door squeals as it opens into a massive autopsy theater. In the center, there's a metal table caked with dark liquid that might have once been a blood stain. Above it, there are lights and some kind of scale for weighing organs. To one side of the room, refrigerated storage drawers. To the other, cabinets marked autopsy saws and brain tissue slides.
What?
This was once the place where Dr. Walter Jackson Freeman II got his start in the world of lobotomies.
I knew he's like the forefather of lobotomies or whatever.
Do you
Bad and
know
good.
anything more about him? You seem like you've heard about him.
Just that he started lobotomies.
I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. But he was kind of, in my opinion, a scary sort of potentially sociopath or something. He feels a little serial killer vibey to me. Dr. Freeman was a motivated neuropathologist with only a few years under his belt when he arrived at St. Elizabeth's. Though he was quite young, actually only 28 years old at the time, and inexperienced, he had become obsessed with the idea that a wide range of psychological problems, anything from being a nosy housewife to depression or a debilitating disability, could be treated physically by the way of the brain.
A nosy
Luckily,
housewife.
yeah, we'll
Me.
get to that more because it's a little terrifying.
Oh gosh.
So luckily for him, or maybe not so luckily, I don't know, he had a never-ending supply of dead bodies at St. Elizabeth's, and those were his original test subjects to study. He examined over 1,500 cadavers, all who had been affected by schizophrenia. To do this, he would hoist them up by their ears in front of a grid on the morgue wall, take their measurements, and make incisions to remove and inspect the organs, including also the spine and the brain. And yes, he would often have an audience while doing this, hence the autopsy theater part of things, because there were seats around the room on these risers.
I'm sorry. I don't understand how you hoist someone up by their ears. Like, why are your ears strong enough to take the weight of your whole body? That doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know the answer to that physically, like biologically. I don't know why that's the case, but I can't imagine the way that this would look, even for dead bodies to be strung that way, does not seem respectful
Are you
or
thinking?
normal. This guy is messed up. Like,
Yeah.
even if you're dissecting people, that's not like a respectful, good way to do it. And that doesn't seem very scientific either. It seems more like a fascinated 28-year-old who's playing with dead bodies to me.
Well, also, who's coming to watch this?
Here
Like,
we
why
go.
would you? Oh, okay.
He became a professor at George Washington University, and he would invite his students to come and watch.
Are you professor of what?
I think of neurobiology of some kind.
Oh gosh. I couldn't even like watch my classmate dissect a frog, let alone do it myself. I can't imagine being in a biology class that's like, oh, come watch me dissect
Dissect
this
a human.
person.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Not even come watch me dissect a human, but come watch me hoist a human up by their ears and then rip out their spinal cord and brain.
I know. I just don't understand that at all.
So not only would he invite his students to come and watch, but he also relished in the opportunity to entertain. And that's something that's found in several people's journals, his colleagues and some other people who had attended. He would do things like hold organs up in the air, still dribbling blood and dripping it like down his arms just to keep their attention. I'm
Who
telling
is
you, the
this
guy sounds like
person? No
crazy.
one does that unless they're an actual murderer. Oh my
Well, I mean,
gosh.
he kind of became a murderer if you think about it. You know where this is leading with lobotomies.
Why did you choose another asylum? Why did you do that?
Autumn, you're just mad. You're like, I didn't want this. I didn't want to listen to
Listen,
this
I was
tonight.
mad that we had the first asylum episode.
With that being said, yes, we have talked about asylums before. We've also briefly talked about lobotomies when we had that episode. Well, this guy, Dr. Freeman, along with his colleague, Dr. James Watts, they eventually inspired the beginning of this gruesome movement and were even the ones to give lobotomy its name. And for those who don't know, just again, very briefly, trying not to make this too gruesome, what a lobotomy is that you use a slender metal instrument, such as an ice pick, that inserts through the orbital socket, so next to the eye, up into the brain. This usually happened when a patient was fully cognizant and they would be cutting into their brain. So a patient might be, say, counting down from any given number or singing a song or reciting something else while they were doing this, and they would cut and cut and cut until sometimes the patient became completely unresponsive. Though their lobotomies were not actually practiced at St. Elizabeth's and they were practiced elsewhere, I just wanted to give you that brief note and also mention the first lobotomy patient because I think it's interesting and also sad. But this is a testament to the type of character I think this guy had. The first lobotomy patient in 1936, they performed a lobotomy on 63-year-old Alice Hammett, who, quote, was a master of bitching and really led her husband a dog's life. She worried if he was a few minutes late coming from the office and raised the roof when things did not suit her. She was a typical, insecure, rigid, emotional, claustrophobic individual throughout her mature existence. And that's in the words of Dr. Freeman.
Oh my gosh. That's probably just me reincarnated because you ask James, I get mad at him every time he comes home late.
What woman like doesn't a little bit, right? I mean, I think that's most women. And ironically or not ironically, most lobotomy patients were women. I found that out while researching.
Mm,
But regardless, as you can tell, this guy was a sexist jerk, right?
yeah.
He would claim that procedures like this one were successful because the person would, and this is another quote that he said, they would become like a household pet after an operation.
Yeah, because we know that lobotomies basically got rid of a whole person's personality
Right.
and basically made them like mute to society and everything external
Just mute, but passive to everything going on around them. And some people claim that they were more like zombies than humans.
because they were just brain dead essentially
Mm-hmm.
after that. Like that's all you could be. Ugh, I'm
And
so angry.
this guy, by his count, by his own personal count, he lobotomized over 3,500 patients between the 30s to the 50s in that time period. But our focus today isn't on the history of lobotomies. However, I thought the story and his character was important to flesh out a little bit more because Dr. Freeman might just be one of the ghosts that remain at St. Elizabeth's due to the love of his job, the lab that he worked in that I mentioned, and the attention that went with it. So isn't that just by itself scary to think about that that guy would still be there?
Yeah, I just want to punch him in his face.
Aside from punching him, the creepiness factor of that lab and the things that still exist almost fixed in time from that time period, and then potentially his presence being there. Others who might also be haunting the halls of these buildings include the three aforementioned presidential assassins and would be assassins, as well as former patients in general, and others who are buried on the campus grounds in one of two cemeteries that they have. This includes approximately 450 graves of Civil War veterans alone. And it also includes an unknown number of civilians, American poet Ezra Pound, and a stage and silent film actress named Mary Fuller. What do people experience here? The center building, as it's called, which had been home to many of those former patients, both the good and the bad, has gone through some renovations over the course of history and is said to be very active, having everything from whispering voices, maniacal laughter, to cold pockets and a sense of dread. There's also an atmospheric quality that has been reported to feel like the air itself is expanding and contracting, creating visual waves as if moving through time or some kind of gateway dimension.
Jeez.
I don't know what that's about, but I thought that was really interesting. In addition, there's Dr. Freeman's lab, which is possibly the most eerie hotspot of them all, with ghostly sounds of wheels or some other equipment squeaking, heavy footsteps, coughing, and the feeling of being watched and getting extreme anxiety, as well as a prickling sensation along the forehead, almost as if Dr. Freeman has returned to his favorite lab, waiting for his next brain to dissect.
Oh my goodness. Why would anyone go here?
Like ever
I
to
literally have
investigate or
chills.
something. Ugh, it's creepy
I need a hoodie
to hide in.
to stop my chilliness. I'm
Oh,
like shivering
I was
because I
like, what are
don't
you gonna
like
do?
it.
Like become a little turtle and hide in your hood?
Yeah, that's even better idea.
Just a side note, in case you were curious, the history of the building and where it's at currently. Despite avoiding the more heavy scandals that a lot of places like this went through, St. Elizabeth's still began to decline in the 1950s. And in 1987, it transferred hands from the federal government to DC. By 1996, it was down to 850 patients. By 2002, the remaining patients were transferred to other facilities. But then in 2010, a new building was built adjacent to the campus and is providing psychiatric treatment to this day for those with mental illness in the community.
To this day,
Mm-hmm. Autumn, what's your boo scale rating on St. Elizabeth's Hospital?
I still have chills. Feel like we should go investigate it. Oh, what would I say? Can I say 3.5? Because I can't decide if it's a 3 or a 4.
Didn't
I
you
wish,
say previously your fours that you wouldn't stay overnight or something like that? Or you wouldn't
yeah, I wouldn't
stay
sleep
alone, I think
there.
is what you said.
hmm Yeah. I feel like it's probably a 4 just because I don't feel like I'd like to sleep there. To get it to a definite 4, I wish there was more hauntings of what people have experienced there.
I think one of the reasons why some of these places have fewer stories is just the access is limited to them.
Right.
These places are not supposed to be open to the public. The people who have gotten in are usually because they've broken in.
Yeah, I'd probably say 4. I really don't like asylums. I think there's so much negative energy there. And I hate to say that because I do feel like some healthcare workers, even back in the day, were really trying to do good and help
Mm-hmm.
people. But I just feel like historically, our treatment of mentally ill patients and even sometimes people who were mentally ill but taken there was so poor. To be a person that treats another person that way, whether they're mentally ill or sick or not, or however, there has to be something wrong with you. And that negative energy, I think, just stays in the space, which makes it so scary. That's
I
what I don't
think
like
for
about
me,
it.
I'm more scared of the doctor than I am of the patients
Right,
that might be
exactly.
there.
A doctor who makes his living on the mistreatment of living people and figures out a way to do it legally. There's just something mentally wrong with you that you feel like, oh, I get my yah-yahs out of this and I don't care what it does to other people.
My yayas.
I am
The
an old
scary
lady.
stories I've told turned you into an old lady. We're now the golden girls,
I'm
the
an old
golden boo
lady.
girls.
I would love to be the Golden Girls someday.
You're like, let's think happier thoughts. This is scary. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think I would agree with you. Mine is, I want to say four, because in this particular case, there's something about this guy, if he's truly the most potentially well-known haunt that they have, the most specific one, his lab is not somewhere I would want to go by myself. The environment, I think, can cause fear even if nothing is there. And then on top of that, you're dealing with some unknown that could be there.
Yeah, and I think a place that you wouldn't want to visit when it was working, like in the daylight, is a place you also shouldn't want to visit when it's closed down at night.
But it's abandoned at night
Right?
and haunted.
Yeah, right. So, like, if I don't want to go there, whatever it was, 100 years ago, in the daylight, when he's doing his weirdo operations, I shouldn't want to go there now at night.
Right. Just imagining the bodies strung up in this place
Okay,
and
that's
the
enough.
people watching to walk in there, I think would just be freaky on a whole other
Ugh.
level. So, good night, everybody. Just kidding. Sleep well.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go take my melatonin and curl up with my puppy.
Chocolate always helps. It makes everything better. That's what we learned with Harry
True.
Potter.
Oh, I didn't know we learned that with Harry Potter. I didn't learn that.
What? Where were you?
When do they say chocolate always helps?
Lupin gives them chocolate when they face the Dementors and the sad thoughts that they bring all the time.
Oh, I kind of thought he was getting them some like kind of lace drug or something.
What? This is a
I didn't know.
children's show.
I mean, I didn't know what they were giving him, but I didn't know it was chocolate. But
I
I
mean, I
didn't
guess
know what.
that's sort of a drug for kids.
Great job. Let's never do asylums again. Although I'm sure it will come up.
So everybody now who suggests a hometown haunting, make sure it's an asylum for Autumn.
No, no. Ah, I hate it.
For our haunted trip, when we do it, we should probably have at least one asylum in there.
Probably. There's some asylums you can go to and pay sometimes a nominal fee, like $80 to stay the night kind of thing. So, like a hotel. Like
I
you can
think they
come and
would,
stay.
I think they should pay me to stay there the night.
Join us for our last episode of the season. And hopefully, we'll make it a great one. But thank you for being with us through season one and season two. And if you missed any episodes, make sure you go back and enjoy those. And as a reminder, we do have a support page on our website, boosisters.com. Any kind of donation to help us out, 50 cents, a dollar, $10 would be great just to help us pay our fees of having our website up and having our podcast streaming capabilities so we can keep delivering you great podcasts.
That scare you before bed. And if you can't support us through that page, that's okay. We appreciate your support just listening too and sharing with other people.
Thanks for listening. And as always, happy
Happy
haunting.
haunting.